The Lunar Gate. Chapter 1, The Discovery. The harsh lunar surface stretched endlessly under the stark black sky, punctuated only by the geometric lines of Research Station Kepler-7. Ella Martinez adjusted her helmet's display, checking the atmospheric readings one more time as she guided the repair drone along the station's damaged solar array. 3 months into their 6-month rotation, and already the micrometeorite impacts were taking their toll on the equipment. Panel 17 shows a 30% efficiency drop, came the voice of her chief engineer, Marcus Chen, crackling through the comm system. His bulky figure was visible through the station's observation deck, monitoring her progress from inside. Copy that, Marcus. Replacing the photovoltaic cells now. Ella maneuvered the drone with practiced precision, its mechanical arms delicately removing the damaged components. Around her, the rest of her 5-person team continued their various maintenance tasks, small figures in environmental suits scattered across the station's exterior. Dr. Sarah Kim, their xenobiologist, was examining mineral samples near the station's geological survey equipment. Despite the moon's apparent lifelessness, Sarah remained convinced that traces of ancient microbial life might be found in the subsurface ice deposits. Her enthusiasm was infectious, even if her theories were considered fringe by the scientific community back on Earth. Jackson Wheeler, their communications specialist, worked on realigning the deep space antenna array. His tall frame moved efficiently between the massive dish assemblies, each adjustment carefully calculated to maintain their connection with Earth across the 384,000 kilometers of space. The newest member of their team, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, focused on atmospheric processing systems. Fresh from the Mars colonies, she brought experience with closed-loop life support that had proven invaluable in maintaining their isolated outpost. Ella, you need to see this, Sarah's voice cut through the routine chatter, carrying an unusual note of excitement. What is it, Sarah? I'm kind of busy up here. Ella secured the last replacement cell and began powering down the drone. There's something unusual about 50 meters north of the station. Can you spare a few minutes? Ella sighed, knowing that Sarah's unusual discoveries often turned out to be interesting geological formations that looked like fossils if you squinted hard enough. But the repair work was nearly complete, and they were ahead of schedule. All right, I'm coming down. Marcus, can you finish the calibration sequence? Already on it, Marcus replied. Though I still say we should focus on fixing what's broken before chasing Sarah's latest rock formation. Ella rappelled down the station's side, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal hull as she descended. The lunar surface crunched beneath her feet with that peculiar sound that never quite felt right, like walking on compressed sand, but with an eerie silence that seemed to swallow every noise. Sarah was crouched near a rocky outcropping, her geological scanner sweeping back and forth over what appeared to be a natural depression in the lunar regolith. But as Ella approached, she realized it wasn't just a depression, it was an opening. How did we miss this during the initial survey? Ella knelt beside Sarah, peering into what was clearly the mouth of a cave. The entrance was roughly circular, about 3 meters in diameter, and descended at a gentle angle into the moon's interior. That's what I'm trying to figure out, Sarah said, her voice tight with excitement. According to our orbital surveys, this area was solid bedrock. But look at these readings. She held up her scanner, displaying a 3-dimensional map of the subsurface. The cavity extends down at least 100 meters, possibly much further. My equipment can't penetrate deeper than that. Ella activated her suit's high-powered lamps, directing them into the cave mouth. The beams disappeared into darkness, revealing smooth walls that definitely appeared natural but with an almost too perfect regularity. This is definitely not in any of our geological surveys. We need to report this to Houston. Already tried, Jackson's voice crackled over the comm he'd been monitoring their conversation from the communications array. There's a solar storm hitting Earth's magnetosphere. We won't have reliable communication for at least 18 hours. Marcus joined them at the cave entrance, his heavy engineering suit making deep impressions in the lunar dust. Could be a lava tube, he suggested, though his tone indicated he wasn't entirely convinced. The moon had volcanic activity billions of years ago. The formation is all wrong for a lava tube, Sarah countered, running her gloved hand along the cave's smooth rim. The walls are too uniform, too engineered. And look at this. She pointed her scanner at the cave floor. There's a definite pathway worn into the rock, like something has been traveling through here regularly. Yuki approached from the atmospheric processing station, her scientific curiosity overcoming her usual caution. What kind of something could create a pathway on the moon? There's no atmosphere, no weather, no geological activity. The 5 team members stood in a semicircle around the cave entrance, their helmet lights creating an overlapping pattern of illumination that only emphasized the darkness beyond. The silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the steady rhythm of their breathing and the occasional crackle of static from their comm systems. "We should explore it," Sarah said finally, her voice carrying the weight of scientific inevitability. "Absolutely not," Marcus replied immediately. "We're here to maintain the research station, not go spelunking in potentially unstable underground formations. What if there's a cave-in? What if we get lost? We don't have the equipment for extended underground exploration. We have emergency supplies, portable life support, and mapping equipment," Sarah argued. "This could be the most significant geological discovery in lunar exploration history. We can't just ignore it." Ella found herself torn between Marcus's practical concerns and Sarah's scientific enthusiasm. As team leader, the decision ultimately fell to her. She looked up at the Earth, hanging like a blue marble in the black sky, and thought about the mission parameters they'd been given. "Compromise," she said finally. "We do a preliminary exploration, just far enough to map the initial structure and take some readings. 2 hours maximum, and we stay in constant communication with the station. If we encounter any dangers or anomalies, we turn back immediately." Marcus shook his head but didn't argue further. Jackson nodded his agreement from his position at the communications array. Yuki looked nervous but excited. Sarah was practically vibrating with anticipation. "We'll need portable atmospheric sensors, emergency oxygen supplies, climbing gear, and full mapping equipment," Ella continued, her mind already shifting into mission planning mode. "Marcus, I want you to monitor from the station, maintain communication with us and be ready to coordinate a rescue if something goes wrong." "I'd rather come with you," Marcus protested. "I need someone I trust watching our backs from outside." "Jackson, you're with us. We'll need your technical expertise if we encounter any electronic anomalies." "Sarah, obviously you're coming." "Yuki, are you comfortable with underground exploration?" The atmospheric specialist nodded, though her voice carried a slight tremor. "I've done cave work on Mars. Different environment, but the principles are similar." Within an hour, they had assembled their exploration gear and conducted a final systems check. Marcus remained at the station's control center, monitoring their suit telemetry and maintaining a communication relay. The other 4 team members stood at the cave entrance, their portable lights casting dancing shadows on the smooth walls. "Remember," Ella said, activating her suit's recording systems, "we're documenting everything. Whatever we find in here, we need a complete record for the scientific community back home." Sarah took point, her geological scanners sweeping continuously as they descended into the lunar cave. The pathway was indeed worn smooth, as if countless footsteps had passed this way over an enormous span of time. But that was impossible. The moon had no indigenous life, and human presence had been limited to a few dozen landing sites scattered across the surface. The cave descended at a steady angle, curving gently to the left as they proceeded deeper underground. The walls maintained their unnaturally smooth appearance, composed of a dark basaltic rock that absorbed their lights rather than reflecting them. Every few meters, Sarah would stop to take mineral samples and scanner readings, building a 3-dimensional map of their route. "Air composition is still vacuum," Yuki reported, monitoring her atmospheric sensors. "No trace gases, no pressure variations. Whatever created this cave, it didn't involve any kind of atmospheric process." Jackson's equipment detected no electromagnetic anomalies, no radio emissions, no signs of artificial technology. From all their instruments could determine, they were simply walking through an unusually regular natural cave formation. After 45 minutes of steady descent, they had traveled nearly 2 kilometers into the moon's interior. The cave continued ahead of them, showing no signs of ending or changing direction significantly. Their suit systems indicated they were now roughly 800 meters below the lunar surface, deeper than any previous human exploration. "This is impossible," Sarah muttered, studying her readings. "Lunar caves don't exist at this depth. The geological structure can't support it. We should have hit the limit of the megaregolith layer long ago. Could it be artificial?" Yuki asked, examining the 2 perfect walls with her engineering eye. "By who?" "There's no evidence of any civilization on the moon, current or historical. And the dating on these rock formations suggests they're millions of years old." Jackson suddenly stopped, holding up his hand for silence. "Did you hear that?" The others froze, listening intently through their helmet comm systems. The only sounds were their own breathing and heartbeats, the faint hum of their life support systems, and the occasional crackle of static from their radios. "Hear what?" Ella asked. "I thought I heard music. Very faint, like a harmonic resonance. It's gone now." They waited in silence for several minutes, but the mysterious sound didn't repeat. Jackson shook his head, looking embarrassed. "Probably just electromagnetic interference from our equipment. The isolation can play tricks on your mind." They continued deeper into the cave, but now everyone was listening more intently, alert for any sounds that shouldn't exist in the vacuum of space. The pathway remained smooth and regular, curving gradually through the lunar rock as if following some predetermined route. After another 20 minutes, they began to notice a change in the quality of darkness ahead of them. Where before their lights had simply been absorbed by the black walls, now there seemed to be a faint reflection, as if something was catching and redirecting their illumination. "Are you seeing this?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with excitement and growing apprehension. Ahead of them, the cave opened into what appeared to be a much larger chamber. But more significantly, there was light coming from somewhere beyond their current position, not reflected light from their own equipment, but an independent source of illumination. They approached the chamber entrance cautiously, their instruments scanning frantically for any explanation of the phenomenon. As they emerged from the narrow passage, they found themselves standing at the edge of a vast underground space, easily 100 meters across and equally tall. And in the center of the chamber, impossible and undeniable, was a column of pure white light stretching from floor to ceiling. The light wasn't harsh or blinding, instead, it had a soft, almost organic quality that seemed to pulse gently, like a giant heartbeat made visible. It cast no shadows and created no heat signatures on their thermal sensors. According to their instruments, it didn't exist at all. "That's not possible," Yuki whispered, her engineering mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Jackson's equipment was going haywire, detecting electromagnetic signatures that fluctuated wildly and defied any known physical principles. "I'm getting readings across the entire spectrum: radio waves, microwaves, infrared, visible light, ultraviolet, even gamma radiation. But the intensity levels don't make sense. It's like the light is somehow existing outside normal physics." Sarah had fallen silent, her geological scanners forgotten as she stared at the impossible phenomenon. As a scientist, she should have been documenting everything, taking measurements, forming hypotheses. Instead, she found herself drawn toward the column of light with an attraction that felt almost gravitational. "Sarah, stay back," Ella warned, noticing her teammates' movement toward the light. "We don't know what it is or whether it's dangerous." But Sarah continued walking forward, her movements becoming increasingly mechanical, as if she were no longer entirely in control of her actions. It's calling to me," she said, her voice distant and dreamy. "Can't you hear it?" "The music Jackson mentioned. It's beautiful." Jackson nodded slowly, his own feet beginning to carry him toward the light despite his rational mind's protests. "Harmonic frequencies across multiple dimensions. It's not just sound, it's something deeper, something that resonates with consciousness itself." Ella felt the pull as well, a gentle but insistent attraction that seemed to bypass her conscious mind and speak directly to some deeper part of her being. The light wasn't just illuminating the chamber, it was somehow communicating, transmitting information or emotion or experience in ways that human senses weren't equipped to interpret normally. "Everyone back away from the light," she ordered, fighting against her own growing desire to approach it. "We need to return to the station and report this. Whatever this is, it's beyond our ability to analyze safely." But even as she spoke, she could feel her own resolve weakening. The light seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, creating a resonance that made her feel more connected to the universe than she'd ever experienced. It was like looking at Earth from space for the first time, that profound shift in perspective that astronauts called the overview effect, but magnified beyond anything she'd ever imagined. Yuki was the first to break completely, her scientific caution overwhelmed by an attraction that felt like destiny itself. She walked toward the light with purposeful strides, her instruments forgotten, her entire being focused on the radiant column that had somehow become the center of her universe. "Yuki, stop!" Ella lunged forward, trying to grab her teammate's arm, but she was too late. Yuki stepped into the light and simply disappeared. Not vaporized, not destroyed, she was there one moment and gone the next, as if the light had somehow absorbed her into itself. Her suit's telemetry vanished from their displays, her comm signal cut to static, and there was no trace of her presence except for the footprints she'd left in the lunar dust. "My God," Jackson breathed, his scientific mind reeling. "It's some kind of transportation device. A gateway." Sarah was next, drawn by the same irresistible attraction that had claimed Yuki. She reached the light's edge and paused for just a moment, looking back at her remaining teammates. "It's not dangerous," she said, her voice filled with wonder. It's indescribable. Everything we've ever wondered about, everything we've ever dreamed of discovering, it's on the other side." Then she too stepped into the light and vanished. Ella and Jackson stood alone in the vast chamber, their helmet lights creating small pools of familiar illumination in the overwhelming presence of the impossible phenomenon before them. Their comm systems crackled with static as they tried to reach Marcus at the station. "Base, this is Ella. We have a situation down here. I need you to prep emergency protocols and contact Houston immediately." Marcus's voice came through broken and distorted. "Ella? Your signal is weak. Where are Yuki and Sarah? Their telemetry just went dead. They've encountered some kind of anomaly. We're coming back up." But even as she spoke, Ella knew it was a lie. The light was calling to her too, with a voice that spoke in harmonics her soul recognized even if her mind couldn't comprehend. Every rational part of her knew she should turn around, return to the station, and wait for instructions from Earth. But rationality seemed like a small, distant thing compared to the overwhelming sense of rightness she felt when looking at the light. Jackson was struggling as well, his hands shaking as he tried to maintain focus on his instruments. "The electromagnetic signatures are increasing," he reported, his voice strained. "Whatever this is, it's becoming more active. The resonance frequencies are specifically targeting human brainwave patterns. It's like it's designed to attract us. Jackson, we need to leave. Now. I know we should. But..." He looked at her with eyes that reflected the same impossible longing she felt. "What if this is the discovery that changes everything? What if this is why we're here, why humans reached the moon in the first place? What if we're meant to go through?" Ella closed her eyes, trying to block out the visual component of the light's attraction, but that only made the other sensations stronger, the harmonic resonance Jackson had mentioned, the feeling of connection that seemed to extend beyond the boundaries of her individual consciousness, the absolute certainty that stepping into the light would answer questions she hadn't even known she was asking. "Marcus," she said into her comm, her voice steady despite the internal chaos. "I'm uploading all our sensor data and recordings to the station's memory banks. If we don't return in 12 hours, transmit everything to Houston and tell them we found something that changes everything we thought we knew about the universe." "Ella, what are you talking about? Just come back up here and we'll figure this out together." But Ella was already walking toward the light, Jackson beside her, both of them moving with the inevitable certainty of planets following orbital mechanics. This wasn't a choice anymore, it was physics, destiny, the natural conclusion of a sequence of events that had begun the moment they discovered the cave. "I'm sorry, Marcus," Ella said as she reached the edge of the light column. "But some discoveries can't wait for committees and authorization protocols." The light enveloped her like warm water, and consciousness dissolved into something far greater than individual awareness. Chapter 2: The New World. When awareness returned, it came in layers, like emerging from the deepest sleep imaginable. First, the sensation of breathing, real breathing, not the recycled air of an environmental suit. Then the feeling of gravity, stronger than the moon's gentle pull but lighter than Earth's familiar embrace. Finally, light filtered through her eyelids, but not the harsh artificial illumination of her helmet lamps. This was softer, warmer, tinged with colors her eyes had never seen before. Ella opened her eyes to find herself lying on what appeared to be grass, though the individual blades were longer and more crystalline than anything that grew on Earth. The sky above her was a deep amber color, crossed by two distinct suns, one larger and reddish, the other smaller and brilliant white. The dual shadows they cast created a complex pattern of light and shade that her Earth-adapted vision found disorienting but somehow beautiful. She sat up slowly, taking inventory of herself and her surroundings. Her lunar environmental suit was gone, replaced by what appeared to be her regular work clothes, practical pants, utility shirt, and boots. But the fabric felt different, somehow more durable and comfortable than she remembered. More unsettling, she felt perfectly healthy and alert, with no signs of the disorientation and nausea that should have accompanied whatever method of transportation had brought her here. "Ella?" Sarah's voice came from nearby, carrying the same mixture of wonder and confusion that Ella felt. "Are you all right?" Ella turned to see her teammates scattered across a small meadow surrounded by what could only be described as alien forest. The trees were tall and slender, with bark that seemed to shift color in the dual sunlight, and leaves that chimed softly in the gentle breeze like wind chimes made of living crystal. Sarah was examining one of the trees with scientific fascination, her geological training apparently extending to xenobotany. Jackson stood near the center of the meadow, slowly rotating as he tried to take in the panoramic view of their impossible situation. Yuki sat cross-legged in the strange grass, her engineering mind evidently struggling to process the reality of their circumstances. "Where are we?" Yuki asked, her voice small and uncertain. Jackson pulled out his phone, somehow still functional despite the absence of any cellular networks, and began taking pictures and video. Whatever that light was, it transported us across space. Possibly across dimensions. The stellar configuration is completely unknown, the atmospheric composition is different from Earth, and the gravitational field suggests we're on a planet roughly 1.3 times Earth's mass. "How can you know all that already?" Sarah asked, looking up from her tree examination. Jackson held up his phone, which was displaying readouts that definitely weren't part of its original programming. "Somehow our devices have been enhanced. Modified to function in this environment and provide information we need to survive here." Ella checked her own phone and found the same mysterious modifications. Apps she'd never seen before provided atmospheric analysis, gravitational readings, stellar navigation, and even what appeared to be a universal translation program. Most unsettling of all, her phone's GPS function was still operational, though it was clearly tracking their position relative to landmarks that belonged to no Earth-based mapping system. "The question is," Ella said, standing and brushing crystalline grass from her clothes, "who or what brought us here, and why?" As if summoned by her question, a figure emerged from the tree line at the edge of their meadow. It was humanoid in basic shape but clearly not human, taller than any of them, with elongated limbs and features that were both familiar and alien. Its skin had a faint luminescent quality, shifting between pale blue and silver depending on the angle of the dual sunlight. Most striking were its eyes, which were larger than human eyes and seemed to contain depths that reflected intelligence and something that might have been compassion. The being approached slowly, its movements graceful and non-threatening. When it was about 10 meters away, it stopped and began to speak in a voice that somehow harmonized with itself, creating complex musical patterns that their enhanced devices immediately began translating. "Welcome, travelers from the distant world, The translation appeared on their phone screens as the being's voice created melodic patterns in the air. I am Ethan of the Luminari. We have been watching your species' development and hoped that eventually some of you would find your way to the threshold. Ella stepped forward, her natural leadership instincts overriding her amazement at the situation. The threshold? You mean the light in the lunar cave? One of many distributed throughout your galaxy, Ethan replied, its voice song creating harmonies that felt almost familiar. Transportation nodes created by the ancients long ago, designed to connect worlds where intelligence has evolved sufficiently to recognize and activate them. Sarah approached with her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. The ancients? Are you referring to the civilization that built the threshold? Ethan's expression, insofar as his alien features could be read, seemed to grow sad. The ancients vanished long ago, leaving behind only their transportation network and the worlds it connects. We who remain, the Luminari, the Zephyrites, the Crystalline Collective, and many others, are their inheritors, trying to preserve knowledge and civilization in the face of. The being paused, and the harmonic patterns of its voice took on a darker tone. In the face of the Devourers. Jackson lowered his phone, his technical mind grappling with the implications. You're talking about multiple civilizations connected by this network. How many worlds? How many species? Thousands, Ethan replied. Though fewer now than in times past. The Devourers have consumed many worlds, many peoples. They spread through the network like a plague, destroying not just life but the very essence of consciousness itself. The four humans exchanged glances, their excitement at discovering alien life tempered by the ominous implications of Ethan's words. They had stumbled into what appeared to be an intergalactic war, and from the sound of it, the good guys were losing. Why were we brought here? Ella asked. What do you expect us to do about this? Devourer threat? Ethan began walking toward the forest, gesturing for them to follow. Come. There's much to show you, much to explain. Your arrival was not random, the thresholds do not activate for just anyone. Your species shows promise, traits that have become rare among the civilizations of the network. Perhaps you can help us find a solution that has eluded us for millennia. They followed the Luminari through the crystal forest, their enhanced devices automatically recording everything they encountered. The trees grew larger and more elaborate as they proceeded deeper into the woods, some reaching hundreds of meters into the amber sky, their crystal leaves creating a musical canopy that responded to the dual sunlight with ever-changing melodies. Other creatures began to appear, small, floating entities that looked like jellyfish made of light, larger beings that resembled Earth's great cats but with fur that rippled like water, bird-like creatures whose wings created rainbow patterns in the air as they flew between the singing trees. Your world, Sarah observed as they walked, it's incredibly beautiful. And biodiverse. How did life evolve so differently here? Rethia is one of the garden worlds, Ethan explained, its voice songs creating counterpoint harmonies with the forest's natural music. Shaped by the ancients to support multiple forms of consciousness. The Luminari are but one of 17 species that share this planet, each contributing to the overall harmony of existence here. They emerged from the forest onto a cliff overlooking a vast valley filled with what could only be described as a city, though it bore no resemblance to any human settlement. Spires of living crystal grew from the valley floor, connected by bridges that seemed to be made of solidified light. Gardens floated in mid-air between the structures, tended by beings of various species working together in apparent harmony. But even in this paradise, signs of conflict were evident. Several of the crystal spires showed damage from some kind of attack, their perfect geometries marred by dark scars that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. In the distance, pillars of what looked like black smoke rose from damaged sections of the city. The Devourers attacked us 3 cycles ago, Ethan said, noticing their attention to the destruction. We drove them off, but at great cost. And they will return, stronger than before. They always do. Yuki pointed to a section of the city where beings of multiple species worked together to repair the damaged structures. How do so many different forms of life cooperate so effectively? On Earth, we have trouble getting along with our own species. The network teaches cooperation, Ethan replied. When you can travel instantly between worlds, when you can experience the perspectives of dozens of different forms of consciousness, competition gives way to collaboration. Or it did, until the Devourers began their campaign of destruction. They descended into the valley via a pathway that spiraled around the cliff face, carved with symbols that their translation devices identified as historical markers. The story they told was one of gradual exploration and contact between worlds, the slow building of a galactic civilization based on shared knowledge and mutual understanding. But the more recent markers told a darker tale, worlds going silent, entire species disappearing, the gradual contraction of the network as more and more nodes fell to the advancing threat. What exactly are the Devourers? Jackson asked as they walked through the outer districts of the city. Are they a species like yours, or something else? Ethan's harmonies took on discordant notes as it considered the question. We do not know their true nature. They appear as darkness-given form, entities that consume not just matter and energy but consciousness itself. Where they pass, life does not just die, it ceases to have ever existed. They erase the very concept of the beings they destroy. The philosophical implications of that statement were staggering. Ella found herself struggling to comprehend a threat that could not just kill but retroactively eliminate the existence of its victims. How do you fight something like that? With great difficulty, came a new voice, speaking in harmonies that complemented Ethan's but carried different overtones, deeper, more martial. They turned to see another being approaching, similar to Ethan but larger and with skin that flickered between silver and deep red. I am Kithra, Warsinger of the Luminari. I have fought the Devourers across 17 worlds and seen things that defy all understanding of existence itself. Kithra's presence changed the dynamic of their group, where Ethan radiated wisdom and sadness. This new being projected strength and determination, but also a deep weariness that spoke of battles fought against impossible odds. The humans, Kithra said, studying them with eyes that seemed to catalog their capabilities. Ethan spoke truly, the threshold would not have activated for your species if it did not recognize potential. But potential for what, I wonder? Ella stepped forward, meeting the Warsinger's gaze despite the intimidating presence. We're just explorers and scientists. We don't know anything about fighting cosmic threats or saving civilizations. We were just trying to fix a solar panel when we stumbled into your war. Kithra's expression, if the shifting patterns of light across its features could be called an expression, seemed almost amused. The greatest warriors often begin as those who never intended to fight. And your species has qualities that have become rare in the network: aggression tempered by cooperation, individual initiative balanced with group loyalty, the ability to adapt quickly to impossible circumstances. Sarah looked around at the damaged city, the signs of ongoing conflict, the air of desperate hope that seemed to permeate everything. What exactly are you asking of us? Ethan and Kithra exchanged harmonic patterns that their translation devices couldn't quite render into human language, a rapid conversation that seemed to involve complex emotional and philosophical concepts beyond their technology's current capabilities. Finally, Ethan turned back to them. There is something we must show you. A place where perhaps your unique perspective might see solutions that have escaped us. But it will require traveling to another world, one currently under siege by the Devourers. Jackson's hand went instinctively to his phone, checking readings that confirmed what they all suspected. We can't go home, can we? The threshold that brought us here, it's a one-way trip. Not one way, Kithra corrected, its harmonies taking on more hopeful tones. But the path home leads through the heart of the war itself. The Devourers have seized control of the primary network hub, the world the ancients called the Nexus. All transportation pathways ultimately route through there. To return to your Earth, you must help us reclaim it. The four humans stood in the alien city, surrounded by beings whose existence had been unimaginable just hours before, contemplating a war that spanned galaxies and threatened the very nature of consciousness itself. They were scientists and engineers, explorers and repair technicians, not warriors or heroes. But as Ella looked at her teammates, she saw the same determination in their eyes that had driven humanity to reach beyond Earth in the first place. They had already crossed impossible distances and survived transportation by unknown technology. They had adapted to an alien world and established communication with beings whose very existence challenged everything they thought they knew about life and intelligence. "What do you need us to do?" she asked.